Hello, everyone, and welcome to Overtime. It's been an extraordinary day in as much as we still have a union. Actually, we haven't had. There is still violence in and around sort of the capital area. The capital area is extraordinarily well secure at the present moment. We've had repeated claims. Parler is still very much active, and that is a confusion we'll clear up in a minute. But Parler is still very much active. Parler is a site. It is not necessarily left-wing or right-wing, but it is a favorite of the right-wing who wish to communicate and coordinate activities. And in very much the same way that either the Black Lives Matter movement or other movements before them up through, I think, really the first movement to really use social media, at least in the U.S., would have been Wall Street, Occupy Wall Street, and in the same way that they've always had individual darlings, WhatsApp, and various others, depending on the country. Parler happens to be that of the right-wing extremists. It has been removed from the Microsoft Store, the Apple Store, and the Google Store, all in the last 24 hours. Trump has been permanently banned. The Trump campaign has been banned from Twitter. Actually, I'm not aware yet if that's a permanent ban or a temporary one. My assumption is it's a temporary one for helping Trump get around his permanent suspension. But ostensibly, Trump is never allowed to use Twitter again. The man himself, not just the office is intact, but the man is barred from ever using it, and anyone who assists him in getting around the block risks a suspension. His campaign's media director has also received a suspension for helping him to evade the block. There have been mass suspensions, and I hate to... We try, especially on Overtime, to not get into anything in too small a community, but I will say this. I had done a debate, quite some time ago by this point, with a Christian apologist on whether or not we still need God, and her and a number of other Twitter users who are in some infamy have noted with dismay that they've lost a large number or a large percentage of their followers, in some cases hundreds or even thousands of followers. And they don't know why. They've just vanished. Well, I lose a whole bunch every now and then just because Twitter cleans things up and does purges. But if you're losing that many, there's one of two possibilities. The possibility that they have jumped to this is on Twitter right now. They're having this discussion right now. It's a little startling. Either there's too much censorship, or perhaps you are courting the wrong crowd. And I would suggest perhaps not jumping to the conclusion that the fault is someone else's. At any rate, there have been considerable efforts made at this point to address violence and, oh dear Lord, I hate to say this term, fake news on social media. And it's if you're going to try to remove fake news from social media, it's apropos to start with Donald Trump. I would also like to point out, and I said this yesterday, and I really don't, this is a significant point. He is never allowed on Twitter again, and everything he has ever tweeted, which is a tremendous amount of vile hatred just spewing out of this man, is all gone. It's inaccessible, never to be on Twitter again. Now, we had a question about the Discord. I apologize. The old Discord link has expired, and the Discord link on the starting screen is expired, but we have updated it on the description, so the one in the description should be accurate. For those of you wishing to join the Discord, there's basically always something going on down there. We have a number of different channels for different kinds of discussion, but obviously our politics and news and our lobby is reasonably busy, and you will find a news sharing section where you will see usually pretty much up to the date what's going on, and a lot of people make an effort to get stuff there, oftentimes ahead of even the mainstream news. We will have a clip, one clip from, I try not to drag too much clip from mainstream news, especially since we're not entirely sure what the fair use, quite how far you can push it on fair use, but we will try, because CNN had a very interesting clip. So we will play that in a little bit. But in the meantime, Derek Evans, who we reported yesterday, he was actually was a delegate who had participated in entering the U.S. Capitol with the mob, has resigned. I'd like to discuss briefly what exactly that mob did and did not do, and what we are aware of. We're about to discuss elements of what we know they did, but I want to make it clear. It is very clear. A number of the people there were there to protest, and they were there because they had heard there was going to be a protest, and Trump was actively promoting, we have learned, a protest there. At some point in the preparations for this protest, it took a very dark turn, and we are hearing people suggest that, well, things just got a little out of control. And I think that's a very fair and a charitable interpretation, and I think we should all apply as much charity as possible in all cases, especially to those we oppose. Nonetheless, it's becoming clear now that there was a group of people there who had planned multiple elements of this, including the now called the zip tie guy, who we showed on a previous. He had the zip ties, he had the tack. You don't usually wear that to a standard protest. Further, they had erected a gallows, and we have learned now that, in fact, that gallows was prepared ahead of time for Vice President Mike Pence. This was not just a symbolic gallows. The goal of at least some of the people there was to find Mike Pence in those holes, drag him out, and hang him in front of the Capitol building. Now, as most riots and these kinds of things go, that wasn't the goal of all the rioters. There were some who had a goal of stealing the ballots, because apparently that's somehow going to change the results of the election. We had others who apparently just felt that it was enough to disrupt the certification process indefinitely, and Biden would never be certified. And we had a whole bunch who were just entering because, hey, it's the Capitol building, nothing could go wrong running in there. The woman who we had showed earlier, who was upset because she got pushed and tear gassed, and was asked, well, what happened? And she said, well, I was entering the Capitol building. Well, why? Well, to storm the building, of course. Well, why would you storm the building? Because it's a revolution. And I'm sorry, my view is she should have gotten 2 through the chest. She was lucky all she got was pushed and tear gassed. But nonetheless, she didn't, well, no, she thought this was a revolutionary behavior. So a number of them went in. That was the intention. So, but it's going to get convoluted, and I would like to remind everyone that one thing we know for certain, aside from the fact that most of these people are idiots, is that most of these people are idiots. This had organization to it in some elements, but there were different groups with different plans, and it doesn't seem like any of them were coordinated. Meaning we can sit there, and when we say what we're about to say, that at least some of them were planning on doing, and what we've already said, which was that there were people there whose intention was to execute the Vice President of the United States in front of everyone. When we say that, that seems to actually be a very small minority of the people who were there. It's a larger minority of the people who entered the building. And it seems at least half the people who entered the building had some nefarious actions in mind other than, hey, let's steal a couple of mementos. But some of them were in there to steal a couple of mementos. So this is going to take a very long time to sort out. But at a minimum, we know all the ones who started there were protesters. A number on top of that were rioters. And on top of that, it seems clearly insurrectionists, a very small minority of whom irrefutably planned to commit murder vis-a-vis the Vice President of the United States, who, in their view, they were executing for treason. So, this was an interesting and eclectic bunch, but I say that because we are going to get into what we know so far, and I want to make it clear, this is a subset of these people, and we don't know what size. We don't. it was enough of them to incite this entire thing from happening. The people who broke in did have a plan. It appears they had Capitol officers on their side. It appears at least one senator, was it a senator? Yes, I believe they were accusing a senator who may have known in advance and helped coordinate only for protest purposes, on the idea that perhaps, again, they would simply sit on the floor of the Senate or sit in the chamber of the House and just sit there and disrupt things by just sitting there until they're forcibly removed, which, while not a great idea, if you were for the Black Lives Matter movement, you can't really be against that for the most part, I'm sorry to say. But you can be, at some point, a bunch of people said, hey, if we're going to get in there, why waste the opportunity? So let's talk about what we know at this point. We have now had about 230 lawmakers who are calling for Trump's removal, most of them obviously in the House, slightly over 30 senators, so that's now about a third of the Senate is saying that they would support removal. I think obviously you could get at least half or close to half, because that's the Democrats right there. They just haven't called for it. That's any number of reasons. We know, too, that now 23 members of his administration have resigned in the last slightly over, 36 hours? 23. So he's losing a little less than 1 an hour. We know, too, and we reported this yesterday, but we'll bring this up again, that first of all, during at least part of this, he knew it was going, well, he started with, he was on the phone during the siege with congressmen and senators trying to overturn the vote, having previously had a recording dropped of him trying to get the Secretary of State of Georgia to, quote, find 11,000 votes to help flip the election in his favor. We know that after this started, he basically just watched television, and it wasn't the news, and was ignoring it, was ignoring the fall of the Capitol when he was informed and told that they had requested the National Guard. We now know why they were delayed. We've been trying to figure out why they were delayed after the request. It was because he refused the initial request, which was what we suspected at the time. That was about the only thing that could delay it, and that has now been confirmed. However, eventually, he did, in fact, send 1,100 troops. Again, so far, nobody's asking, so either I'm paranoid or we're just going to have to wait a couple weeks before people start to get into this. What were the orders of that 1,100 troops? He was described as responding actually with glee as this was happening, because he felt that this justified his position that the people would rally around him and that, in fact, the vote would eventually be overturned because it was fraudulent and Trump is not a loser. He doesn't lose elections. But at some point, he sent the 1,100. I have increasingly become convinced that they were there to protect the patriots, at least what Trump called patriots. And what that would mean would be the people who had illegally seized the building. And if they were there to protect them, that would mean they were there to repel any attempt to keep them out by either the FBI, Capitol Police, or what was it, the other team that had showed up? Well, actually, I think it was eventually the full. So Mike Pence then activated the full National Guard, and they absorbed that 1,100, but we never found out what that 1,100 orders were. The National Guard showed up. They helped retake the Capitol, started in the basement, worked their way up. There's secret passages there all the time. It's not secret passages. We had the discussions, mostly just underground passages, because they don't want to expand. They don't want to expand either horizontally or vertically above ground, so they expand underground. That's why there's so many passages down there. But there are some secret passages. That's how some of the congressmen got out. We're learning, too, not all of them got out. They sheltered in place in secret rooms for just such occasions that actually had food stores, and with the lights off and no one really able to see it, some of them sheltered in place until eventually they were rescued. We know that the rioters, who have been called insurrectionists by high-ranking members of government on both sides of the aisle, and by at this point every national news organization I'm aware of, with the possible exception of Fox. I don't know what they've said. But these people had actually maps of Congress, floor plans, room assignments, and it looks like someone who was in Congress helping them get into the building. Again, I think it was 2 Pennsylvania state senators have accused their congressman, their senator, of being involved. So, but it does appear somebody inside was involved. Again, my suspicion is that at the time he thought it was going to be a protest inside the Capitol, which is still, by the way, very illegal. It's grounds for him getting removed from office. Probably criminal, though not something you'd send him in jail for. But if insurrectionists made it in the building with the intention of murdering the vice president, I think he probably is and should be in a great deal of trouble, even if his intent wasn't to allow those people in. The reason we have security is because even if you let in somewhat bad guys, they have a tendency to let in the really bad guys, which appears to be what happened. So let's see. All right. Well, I'll hold off on the video. We're finding out that it was far more violent than we thought. I think with only 5 deaths, the assumption was it wasn't all that violent. It turns out it was. We're going to show some pictures. We're going to show one video of some of that, and some interviews that are just really, you know what? Those of you who have been sticking with us for this, you deserve the treat. We try to be respectful of as many people as we can. No, on this case, I think we're gonna poke a little fun at people who probably deserve it, because you know what? Yeah, it's gonna be, if that's all they get, they'll be really lucky. We now know too that the USA Today, New York Times. I haven't been able to keep up with all of them, but from what I can tell, nearly every single news organization in the world, the editorial boards of those organizations have come out and said that Trump must be removed from office. The general consensus is every day he is in office, we risk a higher danger of more happening on Parler, which has been deplatformed, but still exists. You can still get to it from the web. It's a company and has not yet been taken down by any other legal means. So it's just, if Microsoft wants to pull them from the store, they can. So can Apple, so can Google. But that doesn't mean that they're down. They could pull Twitter just the same. Microsoft, Google, and Apple could all pull Twitter down off their store. You might not be able to access it off your phone, although there's some contention as to whether or not Apple can actually remove apps from your phone once they've been installed. Nonetheless, okay. The goal of all of this being reducing the chances of further violence, which has irrefutably been promised on Inauguration Day, and again, we'll get to that. Nonetheless, Twitter wouldn't be down. You could still go connect to Twitter on the web, and even if websites refused to pass the DNS information along and wouldn't route you through, there'd be other ways of getting to it, and the Google servers technically would still be up, whether or not you could get to them. So Parler isn't down. The information is still up there. They appear to have been allowing far right-wing propaganda and just shy of planning, but apparently certainly early stages of coordination on various troublemaking, but certainly what happened out there just a few days ago. So I would assume we're going to see some very fast political action and or by the FBI to seize their servers and take them down, but so long as they are up, it is continuing. There have been a few people on our Discord who have been interested in that and have been exploring that on their own. Nobody on In Time has been we haven't. It's on the Discord, but we're not. Yeah, what you do on your time is, at any rate. So, and we have now calls for senators who, in one way or another, either fomented this violence or made any of this entire process more difficult. This would include any of the senators who objected to the certification. There was one senator, and we carried this live when he did this. He stood up and said all of this was a farce. This was before they had to evacuate the building. No, actually, I'm sorry. His was, well, I don't remember when he did it. Must have been after. Well, I don't remember. At any rate, he had said all this was a farce, and the only reason these senators were objecting was because they wanted their constituents, and a subset of those constituents at that, to see it, because they're trying to court votes. But they knew it wouldn't change a thing in the Senate if C-SPAN wasn't covering it. If there were no cameras, that thing would have sailed through. Same thing happened with the O.J. Simpson trial. O.J. Simpson trial took over a year. It would have been 6 weeks if there had been no cameras. The amount of showboating for the cameras, knowing full well that that's where it was going to be tried, the court of public opinion. And these senators are all talking to their constituents. So there's been now calls to either censure or in some other way punish the senators involved. I don't think you can do that. They were well within their rights to do the to object to those votes, but everybody again knew it was going to pass. So they were delaying it. They delayed it long enough for the protests to actually break in. Again, I don't think that was deliberate, but the protesters knew it was going to get delayed. Everybody knew it was going to get delayed because of these shenanigans. So the very first one was it Hawley? Yeah, I've forgotten what his name was. Let me check and see if I can find his name real quick. Senator, I think it was Senator Hawley was the first one to make an objection, and he is now saying that was the worst mistake of his political career. But even after this, most people who were going to object withdrew their objections, but a few still did. It's I think how we that's a whole nother set. I'm not even going to get in there. So Ted Cruz is now, there are Texas papers who are coming out and saying that we are embarrassed of our senator and would like to no longer be embarrassed of our senator. So if our current senator could resign so that somebody else could take his place, gee golly gee whiz, that'd be swell. So there are calls for Cruz's resignation. Kind of inclined to think they're not going to go anywhere, but they will make his life miserable for quite some time. Trump's honorary degree has been rescinded to add insult to injury. And there are several censures. Cindy McCain has been censured by the Arizona County Republican Committee, and a few other, there are censures either occurring or in the works. There is a state senator who, oh, Jesus, which one was that? I forget. I'll probably move on. So we've had, well, there are a number of censures occurring, and I think while Pelosi is interested in cleaning house, I think right now it's all hands on deck for the impeachment. It looks right now like all of the impeachment, the articles of impeachment are going to drop Monday. My suspicion is we're going to see some snuck in. The reason for this is because, and we have in our article, I'll try to put the link in here. We did a very in-depth dive on what is impeachment and how does it work. But one of the interesting things about impeachment is the president cannot pardon anybody who is associated with an impeachment explicitly to avoid a conflict of interest. As soon as it passes the House, which is Nancy Pelosi's domain, and she will get these passed in the House. As soon as it passes the House, the president stands impeached. First president in U.S. history to be impeached twice. First president to be impeached with the words insurrection in his impeachment articles of impeachment. But if she can drop in any other articles for which anybody has a grievance on any level, which Trump could pardon, if they pass, it would drastically reduce Trump's pardon power until the trial is concluded. Now, we have learned that Mitch McConnell has made it clear he will start the trial immediately after Biden is inaugurated. This is a problem because while that looks fine on the calendar, you cannot try someone who is not a sitting president. It's very much the same if somebody's on trial for murder and they die, the trial stops. There's no point. You cannot convict a dead person of murder. So you cannot convict a non-sitting. You can't convict a non-sitting person, a president, in an impeachment trial in the Senate. You can't do it. You can't do it. So he could start the trial whenever he wants. If it's after the election, or if it's after Biden is inaugurated, it's not going to happen. But if Mitch McConnell decides to do that, if Nancy Pelosi sneaks in anything tied to Deutsche Bank, anything tied to the possibility of money laundering, which we are pretty sure at this point Trump did, anything tied to tax evasion, any federal crimes for which he could actually pardon himself, if she ties those in, he can no longer pardon himself once they pass. He would probably have a day and a half, maybe two, to pardon himself. The problem is he doesn't know how to draw up the paperwork, and he's just lost 23 of his highest level staff. Secretaries are bailing. Everybody's on their way out. You can't, he doesn't know how to just sit down and write this stuff up and stamp it and get it approved and signed and whatever else he has to do. To tell the truth, I don't know either. I've never had to consider the possibility. Nonetheless, if he was in an ideal set of circumstances, he could pardon himself or his son or anybody else that he's been waiting to pardon until the last days. He could do that easily, and he could pardon 100 people at the last second if he wanted to. That would be at a full staff. The vice president isn't going to help. The vice president's chief of staff has been barred from the White House, so he ain't going to help. The first lady's chief of staff is gone. Secretaries are gone. All of the major department heads are gone. So my suspicion is, well, we've seen... All right. Thank you. My suspicion is that while we have seen a draft of the articles of impeachment, and they do include inciting to insurrection, which is, short of insurrection, it is the single highest charge you can get in this country. It is treason. And my suspicion is there's going to be a whole bunch more articles there. She's going to throw in everything but the kitchen sink, because everything they get passed, they're not even going to get a trial. So it doesn't even have to be fair. It just has to be something that will block him from pardoning himself. I will also remind people, even if he were to pardon himself on absolutely everything he can only pardon himself for federal crimes. He cannot pardon himself for state crimes. Eddie is on the hook for a great many state crimes, not the least of which is that recording that dropped the day before this happened. That was a state crime. So there's nothing he can do about that. But there's federal ones. My hope is this can easily backfire on him, because if McConnell doesn't bring this into the Senate, the trial can't finish. So long as the trial can't finish, Trump can't pardon himself, and he can't pardon Flynn or anyone else he wants. Now, he's already pardoned Flynn on at least a number of things, but if anything else should come up, anybody he wants to pardon, that's done. So, and we're hearing now, I guess, that it looks like Parler's, okay, so they pulled Parler's VPS, so that would be their so I'm not sure. It's hard to say what effect that would be, but it looks like at least part of Parler's server hosting seems to have been revoked. Oh, it's Amazon. It's Amazon Web Services pulled their VP. Okay, so what that would probably suggest to me is Amazon Web Services provides a large number of services to professionals and small businesses, like large organizations and small businesses. It looks like what I'm reading here is that Parler hosts a lot of at least their content on Amazon Web Services. Smaller companies can do this. You pay somebody else to host it all. It's not that expensive, and they have to deal with all the bandwidth. If they were having Amazon do that and Amazon Web Services pulled it, at a minimum, Parler would be severely handicapped in how much traffic they could handle. But if it's their VPS, so that would be, oh geez, I don't even know what VPS is. It'll take me a second. I'll probably remember what VPS stands for. Virtual private server. Okay. If they are entirely a VPS, that would mean they're down. but I don't think they're down, so I don't know what that is. At any rate, it looks like we now have third-party companies that, and we do know also, I think Cloudflare, which provides denial of service protection and provides all sorts of other services. Virtual private server. Yep. Okay. Thank you. Just took me a minute. I am tired. My brain's a little. There's some lag. My mouth is speaking well before my. I'm going to say something really completely monkey balls, and then my brain is going to. At any rate, my brain is going to catch up and say, "Did you really say that?" And I don't know. We're moving forward. This show has a purpose. At any rate, so yeah, virtual private server, but which basically means that sounds to me like actually they were entirely hosted off of AWS, which I wasn't aware they did. But if they do, and if it was entirely a virtual private server, then that would mean they're down. But I'm not aware that they're down. At any rate, it seems like their capacity is significantly diminished. So now the goal of all of this is to stop what appears to already be a planned attack on the inauguration. Now, they've already said there have been reports on Parler, and you can go to Parler maybe and see them talking about. And one of my favorites was, we don't care about. There's no police force large enough. There's no army large enough to stop us. I think the U.S. Army may take a stab at it. And here's the interesting thing, which is they're not actually allowed to deploy because of posse comitatus. Posse comitatus, they're not allowed to deploy inside the United States to stop you and your rioters. So I guess you guys can come in and overtake the Capitol, except there is one problem. Posse comitatus only applies to states. D.C. is not a state, and the military can act almost without impunity there so long as they are properly authorized. And we've discussed this before. I think the authorization's already been pulled from the president. I think that's reasonably clear when you see that Biden was the one who actually issued the final order, and he's not empowered to otherwise. Why on earth is he issuing orders to the U.S. military? He cannot do it. He does not have the power by the Constitution unless the president has acted contrary to the Constitution and the. Sorry, I may have misspoke there. Yeah, thank you. Sorry. If he's acting contrary to the Constitution, they can. In fact, they're required to disobey an unconstitutional order if, as I suspect, the initial order of 1,100 troops was there to defend the, quote, patriots and protesters, then the military could start taking orders from Pence, which in fact they did. This was so shocking, news organizations had to call up the DOD and say, we're reading this press release, and it kind of looks like you just said Pence is the one who authorized this, and they said, yes, Pence authorized it. All right, so that means tanks, military, Navy SEALs, Delta, if they wanted it, drones, snipers on every roof, everywhere for 50 miles. My advice is don't go there if you're looking to cause trouble. That's my personal advice. And this very, very Trump bravado. There's no military. So I think the U.S. military is going to give you a run for your money on that one. My advice is don't fucking try it, but you do you. At any rate, so what we have here is, yeah, cute. All right. I'm sorry. I get a little triggered by some of this stuff. I probably would get less triggered if it wasn't for the huge number of people saying that, well, we just want our rights, man. We just want our rights. What about my rights? I voted. My vote was counted. You're trying to get rid of it. You're trying to overthrow it. And you're trying to overthrow it by murdering the vice president of the United States, who, by the way, as a human being, I detest. When push came to shove, he did the right thing. Which is one of the things I have genuinely liked about the guy from day one. He may want he wants a Christian caliphate where it's okay to murder homosexuals. I think that's what he wants. I don't think he's going to say it because he knows he's not going to get elected that way, but I think that's what he wants. But he also thinks the Constitution is the divine word of God. So when the President of the United States tries to break the Constitution, he's got to choose between the President and God. And Trump may think he's God. He may think he's smarter and bigger than God because, you know, he knows all the big words, but Pence doesn't. So at least Pence is predictable. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to get ready. We're going to see if we can show this video here. And then, let's see. I'm actually going to need to, yeah, okay. Yeah, let's switch this over. I think we'll make a little more room for the video. And then, all right. And I'm sure I've missed something. There's a lot going on. I mean, again, at least there hasn't been any significant violence today. There has been, like I said, definitely some skirmishes, and there's been, you know, it hasn't been a perfect day, but, so now this is some of the, I think this was CNN's footage on some of the riots as we sort of understood. I think this is the right clip. This should be the right clip. As we started to understand a bit more about what was going on. So let's play a piece of this here.
We're not standing here. We're not standing here doing some more.
What are we supposed to do? Okay? The Supreme Court's not helping us. No one's helping us. Only us can help us.
All right, so what you saw there was tear gas being deployed. So there was definitely, and this is where there was some confusion on the original day, there was definitely some attempt made to repel them. They weren't just allowed in. We also, by the way, want to clarify, there's been pictures of a state senator letting people into the legislative building, and we've had some confusion on the Discord and a few other places as to where that happened. That state senator was letting them into a state capitol. This is one that happened, I think, about a month back, and he has been removed just in the last day or two as a result of that. So he, hold on one second. But people have confused the, okay, so was that Portland? Oh yeah. Well, Evans, I think, was the other one, but there's been a couple. I'm getting confused with all the names. There's a lot of information coming in quickly. But he's been removed, but he had nothing to do with, just because he happened to be removed at roughly the same time all of this happened, and the footage that proved that he let them in came out, everyone confused this with what happened at the state capitol versus what happened at the nation's capital, two different capitals. It's confusing because I think there was rioting there too, and somebody had suggested too, I think this was also on CNN, at some point we have to acknowledge these aren't the exceptions. We keep talking about the exceptions, and the exceptions of black men getting pulled over and shot and killed at higher rates than their proportion of the population should permit, and the violence that's happening in this country. And we say, well, it's the exception, it's the exception, it's the exception. At some point, we have to realize it's not the exception anymore. It's who we are. May not be who we want to be or who we were, but sitting back and yearning to leave it to Beaver 60s doesn't bring them back. I don't think they were ever real in the first place, but nonetheless, I think the first step in solving a problem is acknowledging one. This is who we are now. If it got this far, we elected this man, and while he didn't win the popular vote, he got in. And this is where we can, not as many as you'd like to think were surprised by any of this. So let's keep going here. Let's go on to the next. All right. So
group of Trump supporters.
So this is. Hold on. This is. All right, this is them calling.
Unquestionable that our votes were stolen. It's unquestionable. There's so much proof.
Oh, people, come on! You didn't come here for nothing. Come on up, tell Nancy Pelosi what you think.
We want our representatives to do the right thing and decertify like the 7 swing states.
The rally.
So, I mean, I think already, and I mean, we've seen some other pictures. We have some footage also of the, oh, let me pause this. Hold on. I'm getting notifications, which is great, but they're actually blocking my, there we go. The, hold on. I'm going to knock this back just a touch. This was more violent than we had thought, and we have more footage also, and I think you can find this on the Discord, of whole rows of Capitol officers blocking them from going around the front, and they find a door in the back and just go in that way. And so, yeah, we still don't know, and we know there has to have been some culpability in from the Capitol Police Force. We still don't know what it is, but they many of them tried. One of them was crushed. That footage also, and there was some confusion. It was suggested to me that we play it. I decided not to because I thought he was killed, and unfortunately, by accident, we have had people killed on this air when you're doing live streams of riots. That does happen, but we do try to avoid it. And it was an officer, but nonetheless, it turned out he made it. But we haven't brought that up. At any rate, we are. It was more violent than was thought, and we do know that they did have some form of inside help. And I would like to reiterate one more time, to the best of our understanding, the inside help was. To the best of our understanding, was there to help them get in so they could do a sit-in on the floor of the Senate chamber. Still illegal, still should be kicked out of, lose the right to ever be in law enforcement or in any elected official position ever again. But there's a big difference between letting people in to do that and some consequences you probably should have foreseen by letting in other people who want to hang the president, the vice president, and then deliberately saying, they're here to hang the vice president, let's let him in. But we've identified now, I think it was 6 people who have said that was deliberately what they were there for. That's what the gallows was for, and that was their plan. 6 out of how many, we don't know. But there were, yeah. Let's play a little bit more of this.
Have trial by combat.
He just said trial by combat. I'm ready. I'm ready.
People marched down.
All right. So I think they're looking at that and a few other statements as to once again the inciting violence. I don't think that's something you should say to a large group of, and I think that may have, I'm suggesting I may have slipped and hit the wrong button on that one. So let me see if I can get back where we were. There we go. And then let's bring that back there. Oh, and put that in the right spot. There we go. And we'll get that one back to where that should be. Huh. So and then I can do a quick go through in the live chat. I haven't I haven't actually been keeping up with it because I want to go through this a little quickly. Obviously, I'm tired. Everybody's tired. It was nice to have a day where we weren't we weren't inundated with. I would have thought that. Listen, you take away somebody's voice. That's when they do something stupid. And someone had made a suggestion that got a lot of pushback, like, "Why would you take away Trump's Twitter account? He's going to do something. It's dangerous." Like, how could that be dangerous? Yeah, I agree it's dangerous. I still think you have to do it, but I do agree it's dangerous. And I think he's going to do something dangerous. And the reason he's going to do something dangerous is because he doesn't have a voice anymore. He needs to talk and he wants to be heard. And right now, neither's happening. So he's going to do something dangerous. But he didn't today. That was a shocker, at least not that we're aware of. We don't know what he's doing. All right, trial by combat. This is okay. You know what? And anyone who wants to make fun of these people at this point, I'm completely okay with. I'm sorry. This goes beyond the
Once a few rioters broke into the building, the mob followed.
I was actually here while this guy started breaking in with a cane. Obviously, there's a power struggle. There's the peaceful guys that were like, no, we don't want to do that. Then there was that guy. You know, he just said, well, I'm breaking it in.
Broke down the barriers, and we rushed them. We charged them. We got all the way to the steps. They made a line. So we stood there and we tried to push them back a little bit until finally they started getting rough with us. So we tried to push them back. So that's what we did. We pushed them back. We tried to get up the steps. They wouldn't let us up. So then they started pepper spraying and macing everybody.
Thank you.
Are you okay? Get some milk in your eyes.
They maced me.
Yeah, milk.
They pushed me out and they maced me.
We spoke to
So that's the woman that we had on from yesterday or the day before.
Yeah, we went in there, and then I walked in, and there's just a whole bunch of people lighting up in some Oregon room. I don't know if it's there's tons of Oregon paintings, but they were smoking a bunch of weed in there. And then we moved it down, showing the statues. Cops are very cool. They're like, hey, guys, have a good night. Some of them, it's just crazy. It's really weird. You can see that some of them are on our side.
We've reached out to the
Yeah, she wasn't acting. We've showed that video. If it's loaded, I'll show it's loaded. I'll show it again. I'll show it. She's not acting because nobody who could act would be that stupid.
Shouting at the cops, and there were people arguing with them, trying to get them on our side, basically.
Clashes with police happened sporadically throughout the day, and waves of tear gas wafted over the crowd.
And this is continuing again. It's nowhere near as bad, and it's much further from the Capitol, but there are still engagements now quite far away from the Capitol, but they're still there and they're still pushing.
You know, this is a bunch of really, really pissed off regular folks. I get a job. This is Wednesday. I'm supposed to be at work. Yeah. Shh.
Yes, Jake, we will. We're going to do
That's
it.
what we're doing. We're fighting back.
And what's the point? What's the end game?
What's the point?
Yeah.
We're losing our freedoms. What do you mean, what's the point?
Taking our freedoms, locking us down, and turning this country into a blasted socialist republic. And that is not right. That's what I'm doing here.
All right. So that gives us, I think, a much better idea of what that really looked like and what was going on. The good news is for people who said that the Capitol Hill police just rolled over, they did not. The bad news is there is considerable evidence that huge swaths of them did. So what was the other one? We'll put this in, let's see, I'll bring that up, and just because it's the only way it's going to be properly formatted. But that's the woman up there on the far window. That's normally where we have our calendar, and you will see she's up there now. She is the one who was talking about being maced, and yeah. I don't think she was acting. I have to believe if you were going to act and you were going to try to get sympathy, you would not be this fucking dumb. Let's see what she has to say.
And what happened? You were trying to go inside the Capitol?
Yeah, I made it like a foot inside, and they pushed me out, and they maced me.
What's your name? Where are you from?
My name is Elizabeth. I'm from Knoxville, Tennessee.
And why did you want to go in?
We're storming the Capitol. It's a revolution.
Thank you.
She's lucky she wasn't shot through the head. Probably what should have happened to her, to be honest. And Titan is correct. In general, I'm not a huge fan of mocking. I'm not a huge fan of humiliating people. And when you see people doing really dumb things, I don't like bringing up the shows just for the sake of showing people doing dumb things. All that we've shown today is an exception. If you can, dear Lord, Dear Lord, why are you storming the... Why? Yeah, what's the end game? The end game, it's freedom. Oh, dear Lord. Oh, my God. Oh, my God. I'm going to play that. I'm sorry. I'm going to play that one more time. Here we go.
That's what we're doing. We're fighting back.
And what's the point? What's the end game?
What's the point?
Yeah.
We're losing our freedoms. What do you mean, what's the point?
Taking our freedoms, locking us down, and turning this country into a blasted socialist republic.
I'm going to do the whole why. Yes, we need farms and for food, but they need the ivory tower if they want the depleted uranium bullets that keep the Ruskies at bay, which they seem to think is important because socialism. But I'm going to save all that for some other time. I think we're going to try to keep this a good show. You guys were good about the fact we were a touch late, which we have a tendency to do. But at any yeah, I don't. Maya, that's a very good question. Let's not think too hard about it. Yeah. Oh, dear Lord. So like I said, I mean, the good news is we haven't had a lot else happen today. There's been the usual resignations. There's been a lot of condemnations. I don't think that it's clear that while he will be impeached, he will not be removed from office. However, the impeachment process is important for any number of reasons. And I said this last night, and I'd like to sort of say this again, sort of as our parting thing. I don't think putting him in jail is the worst thing you could do to him. I'm not suggesting we don't put him in jail. I think in jail, throw away the key, then throw away the cell, and then just throw away the prison is I'm cool with all of those things. But that's not the worst you could do to him, because he's still going to be a martyr in his own mind. I don't think taking all his money is the worst you could do to him. I think taking away his Twitter account is actually a huge start. It wouldn't be to me. It wouldn't be to most people I know. It is to him. It is to him. He needs that. That's like breathing to him. So, which is why he keeps going to other accounts. I hope he calls up Hannity and says, "Hey, Hannity, can I borrow your account?" And Hannity goes, "Sure." That's sailed. Hannity now knows. Hannity now knows not to give Trump his Twitter account to let out a message. But, Rush Limbaugh was also removed from Twitter. So it's. I mean, they're taking these things seriously right now. At any rate, the worst thing you could do to him is demonstrably show that he was the worst president in U.S. history. Now, there are a number of people who think it was Nixon for any number of reasons. Nixon did a lot of great stuff that people don't realize. He was a really good president. He was paranoid. And he thought he was above the law, and it bit him in the end. And that wasn't the only criminal thing he did. It bit him in the end, and it wasn't the only one. So he was a criminal. But he actually did a really good fucking job as president, which people forget because they only remember the end. People only remember what you did last. What he did last was watch television. He fiddled as Rome burned. He watched television. I think very little in my mind is going to make up for what the last 4 years has actually done to our standing in the rest of the world, in allowing China to fill the vacuum of soft power and hard power in some cases that we've left. The lack of trust our strongest allies have in us now, because we're telling them, we'll only protect you if you pay us enough. Germany, France, England, because that's the way the U.S. rolls. It's about the money, and that's all it is. Fuck the fact that the whole reason NATO was there, so that we don't get dragged into another world war. It's cheaper to help them maintain stability over there, keep the Russians in place, keep stability over there. That's cheaper in human lives and everything. But Trump doesn't see that. It's cheaper to pay the World Health Organization some money so that we can fight these things. It's cheaper to listen to your scientists and do a lockdown instead of having an economy that hobbles along until there's too many people too sick to work, and then it collapses worse than it ever would have. He's going to be remembered as the first president ever to be impeached for, hopefully the only one ever, to be impeached for inciting insurrection. He is going to be remembered as the first one ever to be impeached twice and to have members of Congress, including his own party and high-ranking members of the RNC, saying he should be removed by the 25th. That's never happened before. Donald Trump Jr., by the way, came out and said that he was ready to grab a weapon and defend his father and defend the Constitution of the United States. That entire family is unhinged, and we already knew that. We already knew he was probably a sociopath, but holy smoke. So we're going to see what happens. We know for a fact that there are plans for an attack on Biden's inauguration. Biden, we now believe, we know he is considering doing a virtual inauguration. May or may not be a good idea. I don't think it's as good idea as he may think it is, but it's not necessarily a bad idea either. I mean, the reality is you should be able to secure it. Would reduce the chance of violence. On the flip side, I want to find out who these people are. I don't know that using him as bait is a great idea, even if you can secure it 100%. But at any rate, that is the thing about Biden. He's not out to get anyone, even the people who are out to get him. So it looks like they are seriously considering a virtual inauguration. And we will see, the whole family's legacy is done. And now that there's blood in the water, you're going to start to see indictments on previous things that people didn't want to indict over because he was a sitting president, one, and they couldn't. And because he'd been Teflon bulletproof since then. He is going to lose all his money. He's almost certainly going to end up in jail on any number of things. I think the money laundering is one of the things that's going to get him. Emoluments is going to get him. I mean, he has more indictments at this point than Al Capone. Not more than Nixon, more than fucking Capone. So I think he's going to end up genuinely as the worst president this country has ever seen. And that he cannot abide. That's what's going to hurt him. And it's not going to be specifically that title. It's going to be the fact that people believe it. It's going to be the fact that people are going to call him that. And he's always going to talk about how unfair it is, but he'll know he will never be able to change it. This happened on his watch, and he laughed and watched television, and people were so disturbed by it. 23 members of his administration bailed for that alone, and they said he was just laughing as Congress fell. His administration has been a joke since he started. Jeffrey Ross, who does a great job at the roasts, and I've seen just about every roast. I think they started getting a little, but the original roasts that weren't televised and that weren't meant for Comedy Central were the funniest things you've ever seen. And Jeffrey Ross is one of the few that really keeps up with the tradition in that way. It's hilarious. And he was at I think it was, and this is often thought to really be the impetus, believe it or not, for why Trump ran. When Jeffrey Ross, during the Correspondents' Dinner, said, I heard that Trump was going to consider running for president and he was going to consider running as a Republican, which is odd because I thought he was going to be running as a joke. And you could see his face because nobody makes fun of him and people had already said he could never be president and it'd be a terrible one. And now he's taking a whack at the job. And this is where we are. He wanted to be famous. He did. He wanted to be famous, and he wanted everyone to remember him forever. He's got it. He's got it. And I'm glad I'd trade it all for this never of having it happened, but I'm glad he's got it the way he's going to get it, because he's never going to be able to run for anything again. His family will never be able to run for anything again, and hopefully we'll be a little more careful in the future who we elect. But he's going to go down in history in 200 years from now. Yep. They'll be saying his name. He's got that much. All right. Well, I've been sort of keeping an eye on the live chat. I didn't catch anything that I've been dropping in and saying hi. And Seth Meyers Seth Meyers, I think Seth Meyers did say something like that. You know, that may have been Seth Meyers. Why did I think that was Jeffrey Ross? I may go back and check, but I think you're right. I think that was Seth Meyers who said that, not Jeffrey Ross. Thank you for the correction. Yeah, well, the Republican Party was split in two when Bush won his second term. But we're only seeing it now, but I think you're right. I think you are absolutely right. This will cause a fracture, and we're going to have a third party. I don't think it, and I'd actually even support it a little bit if it would be viable enough to create a national third party, which would need 3% of the vote in the Electoral College. Since that's not going to happen, they're going to get wiped out. But as well, they should. So, all right. Well, thank you all very much. Thank you to the live chat. I'm going to try to drop in the Discord for a little bit. I won't be in there for too long. I have to take it easy on my voice ever since we did the original stream, which was 13 hours of me talking. Listen, I've had people say that I could probably talk forever, but between 13 hours of talking and everything that we've been doing, my voice is starting to feel it. And since I already had a few issues with my jaw anyway, I'm sitting there going like, you know what? I'm going to try to take it easy. So I may drop in and definitely say hi a little bit and listen to what people are saying and see if anyone wants to chat about anything. So I'll be in the Discord, I think, in about 5 or 10 minutes. But I'm probably not going to stick in terribly long because it's just, it's been long and I got to rest. We're going to do another show tomorrow and we're going to keep doing shows until it looks like this is credibly over. We do have a correct link for the Discord in the description. We've also been dropping it and we look forward to chatting with you guys later and seeing you tomorrow. So thank you for joining us. If you've gotten this way, please, there's a number of you watching, hit the like and subscribe button, that thumbs up and the subscribe. It helps us in the metrics. It really does. So if you want to support the show, and I think you do if you're here, hit those buttons. We'd really appreciate it. And I will catch up with you all in a little bit.